Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I'm not going to start this podcast talking about my wife's cancer and our first chemotherapy treatment. That happened earlier today, but let's just say it was pretty uneventful, and I'll tell you all about the side effects next week. This intro is going to be about another cancer survivor, a friend of mine, and so many others that is no longer with us. Adam Balarajan was dealt a bad hand as a kid. He was diagnosed with a cancer that he was able to beat. While there aren't many perks to cancer, there was one for Adam. He was granted a wish by the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and what he chose to do was go skiing with his hero, Shane McConkey. And while I don't know all the details of that trip, it was a life changer, and it set Adam on a path in life. He beat cancer, finished college, and moved to Lake Tahoe, Palisades, USA. I met Adam when he was working at the High Fives Foundation. Through work and travel, we would see each other about 10 days a year, and it was always so fun. A lot of skiing, drinking, and having a good time. Adam was always really concerned about how I was doing and how I was feeling, and I always noticed that, and I thought to myself, when you go through what he did as a kid, I'm sure it gives you a much greater appreciation for life, and you want to make sure that everybody is doing well in their lives as well because you went through some shit. And what he seemed to really be about to me was meaningful relationships. He was the type of nice that I didn't experience much in life, and it was always a breath of fresh air to see him. Over the years, I think Tahoe life caught up with him, like it can for a lot of people, and eventually he moved back east and got himself sober. I would speak to AB via email or a random call if I needed information for a podcast or if he needed people for a random project that he was working on. And while we were never the best friends, we were close when we saw each other and talked. What sucks about this is that Adam and most people I know, I only see what they show me. I mean, I didn't know that he had any issues with partying until he told me that he quit. So I definitely have no idea what was going on inside his head. Unfortunately, Adam took his life this week. I don't know if I'll ever know what really happened, and I don't really need to. It fucking sucks to know that it happened. I mean, Adam really had so many people, me included, that would drop everything just to be there for him, to help however we could. But help isn't an easy thing to ask for, and it's soul-crushing to think of someone as personable and outgoing as Adam could feel so alone. But this seems to be happening more than ever these days, and I have no idea what the solution is. But we should all be checking in with our friends to see if they're okay, even if that friend is seemingly as happy as I thought Adam was. It's such a loss, and I feel bad for his brother, his family, Roy Tuscany, Sherry McConkey, and the whole Tahoe community. And if anyone is out there hurting or just needs to talk, reach out to a friend before you consider doing anything drastic. Shit, you could even reach out to me, even though we don't know each other, and I'll talk to you. I mean, no one wants you to do anything drastic. There are people to help you with your problems, and as tough as it is to ask, sometimes you just need to do it, because if you're gone, well, you're not here. And AB is not here. I'm definitely going to miss Adam, and when I get my first days at the summit at Snoqualmie this year, which should be really soon, I mean, they open up tomorrow, my turns are going to be for Adam. I'm going to be thinking about him every time I go up this season, because he and I shared some amazing times, whether it was at Palisades Tahoe or at Alpine Meadows or wherever we were. It was always an enjoyable experience, and it always seemed to be great skiing because my timing has been impeccable with my travel a lot. And Adam, you can bet when I get home from the mountain, at least that first time, I'm going to head straight to Marination to have the lunch that you, Roy Tuscany, and I would always have when you were in town. I'm going to miss you, brother, and I can't believe that you're gone. What I'm not going to miss is all these heavy and sad intros. What a fucking year it's been. The good news is that it's snowing everywhere. The Alta footage that I've seen is all time for November, and I know it's been nuking all over the place, and I can't wait. But something you don't have to wait any longer for is for the reboot of the iconic brand Forum snowboards, and they are being brought back to life by one of snowboarding's legends. Peter Line started the Forum brand back in the late 90s, and the team he created, the Forum 8, became the first and greatest super team in snowboard history. That's arguable, I'm sure, but whatever, I'm saying it. And I should mention, while Peter and I don't talk about it on this podcast, he was not only known for his style, inventing tricks, video parts, and a lot of X Games hardware, but he's also a talented designer known for his board graphics and stylish functional outerwear. Peter and I did a full podcast 6 years ago, and we cover his life and times in that one. This show hits on a few things that we didn't talk about back then, and then takes a deep dive on Forum from the beginning to the reboot. Before we get into it, I want to ask you to subscribe wherever you listen, tell a friend about the show, and if you get those Spotify year-end reviews and I'm part of yours, please post that on social media and tag me. It makes me feel really good about myself, and it's really the only thing that gets me going these days. Finally, I want to ask you to support my amazing sponsors. I only work with the best, and they are Elon Skis, Outdoor Research, and with OR, the 25% off code is back. Don't buy second-rate outerwear that tries to wow you with their marketing but leaves you wet and cold. That sucks. Go with OR, and you'll get 25% off. Another brand with a discount code is Stanley. And I don't know why I'm going on this mini ad little rant here, so I'm going to stop, because the ads are in the show. My other sponsors are GoPro, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk with Peter Line. So the last time you and I talked for a podcast, we were at Super Park at Crystal Mountain, and we were at a bar, but you were sober. You weren't drinking, and that was a big deal at the time. What is your current status with drinking?
Still sober, over 3.5 years. So yeah, I think when that last one happened is probably fairly recent.
Well, that's pretty amazing. Congratulations on that. Are you totally sober, or do you smoke weed or do anything else, or is it purely business Peter these days?
When I say sober, it's just drinking sober, because that was kind of like my only big issue. I never really smoked weed too heavily or did any other hard drugs or anything on a heavy basis. So I never really had issues there, except for drinking. I just kind of really liked, and it was everywhere, and a social thing for me that kind of got me out of the house. But then after I quit drinking, still need a little something. Smoked weed a little bit more, which is kind of fun with kind of getting creative and everything too. That's kind of a different thing, because like drinking for me is just kind of a social thing to get me out, but it kind of drags after a while. And so that's what I kind of think I got into the whole drinking thing, where weed doesn't really do that. And so when I am home, it's kind of smoke some weed, do some weird creative stuff, and then try and get myself to go out. But weed doesn't really help with the social issue with me. I just kind of quiet down and sit in the corner with that one.
Right. But when you quit alcohol, and that's something that gets you out of your shell, I would think, because I've seen you before where you're quiet and maybe not the most outgoing person, it seems like. But then I've seen you where you are outgoing, and that's usually when you're drinking. So when you quit alcohol, do you have to replace it with something like exercise or something to get lost in, or are you just able to quit?
For me, I've seen how different people work with alcohol. Sometimes it's not even an issue with them. Sometimes they kind of lean on it and then replace it with something else like exercise. I've seen a lot of people get sober, then they're just turned into like Iggy Pop style, where they get clean on drugs and then just go full other direction to get another addiction on something else. So I think it's, for me and a lot of people, it's more of the addiction, and then just alcohol is the one that was chosen. Other people choose different sorts of addictions, and the kind of the way their headspace type work, and possibly a chemical imbalance and shit like that. It's getting a little further than my expertise here, but I mean, I can kind of see it being not just alcohol being an issue, but kind of a couple multifaceted issues that kind of combine to where one person's on alcohol, one person might be smoking weed every day, which, you know, anything that you do to an excessive amount that starts interrupting your normal kind of everyday life can become a problem, from cell phones, video games, exercise, anything, you know, like if it's just kind of controlling your life. I mean, that's part of the, just being a part of addiction type of a thing, which if you can control, or if you don't have that issue, it's not quite the problem. But yeah, I wouldn't blame everything just on alcohol.
And while it's cool to be sober these days, when you think about your younger days, it was cool to party. And what's the most fun drunk story that you can think about during your snowboard career that you remember? Was there one or two big nights of just ridiculous partying that you kind of look back and be like, that was fucking awesome?
There's definitely a lot of that. I mean, I don't regret drinking at all. I think I had a great time. I was actually fairly good with it compared to some people. When I say good, I mean, I wasn't necessarily the one to start fights or anything like that, because I think I would have quit a long time ago. I wasn't kind of the fun drunk. I mean, I could probably be obnoxious, I'm sure, and kind of say some dumb shit or whatever, as we all do drinking.
Right.
So, like, most of the times when I kind of go out, it'd always be pretty fun. That was kind of the reasons why I kept on drinking. And then once more of those kind of embarrassing moments or the hangovers kind of get worse and worse and worse. I wasn't really much of a blackout drunk either. Whiskey, I learned early on not to drink too much whiskey, but definitely times of bald face were always kind of great up there at the bar there, and drank too many White Russians or whiskeys up there and actually blacked out up there. one of like the 2 or 3 times I've ever blacked out drinking. But even then, hearing this story after the blackout, I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't that bad.
But your life for 15, 16 years was travel to a certain place. Everybody's excited to get you in their group, and they're going to show you all the best places to ride. They're going to get hammered with you at night. And then it's like repeat, and you do that over and over and over. And the whole Groundhog's Day of that is something that you get used to. And then when you get to this day and age where you're not drinking anymore, when you're done riding, do you just go home nowadays?
Yeah, like back in the day when it was wintertime, you kind of wake up early, get in a snowmobile or however you want to go filming or do contests or whatever it was. Then get back at the end of the day, go to the bar, and then depending on how the bar went, then you kind of go out to another bar or maybe come home, take a nap before you go out. But yeah, everyone kind of around until you have a crew where that was a thing. Not everybody in the crew would go out or anything, but if, there's one or two, you instigate each other, and then there you have it. And then the next day you wake up hungover, having to go ride again. And then even the summer times when you're doing kind of movie tours and stuff, you go to different countries and different stops, and then there'd be a party after every premiere, and then turn into that thing where everyone outside expects you to kind of be partying. So it's just very easy, and it's still very fun, meet new people, and full on kind of rock star life that is great, and I totally enjoyed it. Nowadays, riding, I don't ride as much as I used to. I don't ride the same way. But I mean, right now, I'd still go out. It doesn't bother me to be at a bar, people drinking around me, or even having wine or beer at my house for others to come over. It's not like I'm sneaking this shit. It's like my thing that I quit. People come over like, well, how do we know you're not drinking? It's like, well, I don't give a fuck what you think if I'm drinking or not. Like, if I was drinking, I'd be drinking here with you guys, probably a bunch of people in my house, but I'm not drinking. It's for me, not about like just kind of saying that I quit drinking and going around telling everybody about it. It's more like interviews like this is when I kind of have to start doing the math on how long I quit drinking.
Well, 3.5 years is a great accomplishment, and I'm stoked for you, but we're not here to talk about your old life of partying. We're here to talk about snowboarding and forum and all kinds of different shit. And when people think of you, they think of trick innovations. I think the first one that comes to everybody's mind is the backside rodeo, and everybody thinks about your style. And when you think about style, it's really subjective. And you see the video park guys, they're going to feature riders with great style. But when it comes to the contests, and sometimes on the internet as well, you have a mix of everything out there. And these days, when you're looking at contest riding with all the crazy future spinning that's going on out there, in your opinion, is style being left behind?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of the good kids out there who are, as you say, the super spinning and doing the 1800s and 12, whatever they are, they still have their repertoire of other tricks that aren't the big spins. Even though you don't see them in a contest, they're still out there riding. And you see those kids' video parts or their Instagram stuff, and they're still doing really cool shit. And kind of from the era before me, through my era, into the kind of Danny Cass and the Danny Davis, and all up until now, you've had like a strong crew of people to kind of help take that style and dictate the whole way through it and show its importance to the new kids riders now. And so the riders now, like, they know that they need to kind of keep style going. It's a big thing of who they're going to be as a professional snowboarder going forward. You can't just be the spin guy and then all your other tricks look stupid when you're riding down to the park or something like that, or the only thing you ride is these 3 jumps in the park and you don't really have any other tricks, so you're not going to really go far in the sport anyway. So you see a lot of really cool tricks. I think hopefully as you see some of these contest innovations from the little knuckle hits and like other things, I think we'll probably see like other sort of variations in contests to kind of keep them fresh and alive. And I think some of them will kind of show some style elements too, to where it's not about how many spins, but a variation of kind of smaller spins. Guys like Dusty Hendricks and Marcus Cleveland are kind of doing some really cool rewindy type weird stuff. And then other tricks where they kind of get into more of a corked upside down spin, but they can kind of fall into something else and rewind it around. I think there's a lot more variations in that aspect of the sport.
When you think of just good overall style from any era, any generation, who epitomizes that for you? Like, who do you like watching the most?
It's always about seeing something new. And so it's not about necessarily one person who's got dope style. It's like who can do a trick that looks fucking cool. Like this kind of bring up Dusty Hendricks had some really fucking clean almost Mark Frank style stuff, but with some crazy cool variations of tricks. And Cleveland with some not only technical stuff, but like going back to the day, like Devin Walsh always had kind of super clean stuff. Wasn't really kind of flapping his arms and stuff around. And like I think for me, always kind of gravitating towards who had good styles because I never really thought I had the best style. And so that was always kind of a motivator for me to clean up my shit.
On the flip side of that, how about the riders, whether it's current or past, that you just watched and you just really did not like their style? There has to be someone you're like, oh, gross, I cannot watch this guy ride.
I'm going to take this one back to where it's a little bit easier, so I don't really want to talk shit on anybody,
okay,
especially names. But I will say a name because this person kind of learned from it very quickly. It was Ross Powers. He was a young kid riding, kind of a name like when he was still 13 or something like that from the East Coast. And right when the first X Games started coming out, he was kind of doing the ballerina type spins and got heavily called out on it for winning some contests with these spins I barely grab. And then he quickly learned after that to grab his board, but even there, it was still kind of like a delicate touch.
Like a little tickle?
Yeah, just like, okay, see, I grabbed my board, I got the extra points or whatever. And he just kind of got harshed on for that. And I think he kind of learned and grew up from there to kind of having the iconic method from the Olympics, one of the sickest styles there is, you know. And he still had his issues with his spins, but he kind of knows where my critique is coming from. So I don't think it's that bad. And Ross is an awesome dude and friend. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing against Ross. He's an amazing snowboarder, but I think that's just kind of an example to show how in the snowboard industry, or snowboard community, I should say, how style is kind of greeted when it's not accepted and how it can change. And then how even after someone kind of learns the lessons, they're kind of accepted back. It's like, okay, that was sick. You know, he's doing cool shit now.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to see someone have bad style when they're 13 and be able to progress by the time they're 20-ish, and they've changed that, and I guess there's some appreciation for that. With your style, you say that you weren't really a big fan of her, thought it was the greatest style, but countless people in the snowboard world think that you exuded style. And one thing about you that was different than almost every other snowboarder was your posture. You've pretty much said that you had bad posture your whole life. Does having bad posture help out your style at all?
I think to answer that question, we should ask Steve Caballero.
Huh. Yeah, I guess he would be someone like that as well. Your build and everything. And yeah, his neck has always looked a little fucked up for some reason.
Yeah, but that gave him kind of his clean, super style. He kind of kept him from kind of flailing to where, yeah, had kind of bad back posture, not quite to his degree by any means. But I mean, it's possible. I mean, I also would do kind of a little bit flaily spin tricks as I was kind of progressing because always the first attempts and kind of learning the tricks, they're not going to be the prettiest thing. And I think that's often also a reason why a lot of my video stuff I'm not really always happy with because it's some of the first times I ever did a trick. And so they're not perfected yet. And then I move on to the next trick. But where I'd have kind of repeated tricks throughout video parts, like backside 180s or something like that, was tricks that I've done multiple times and try and kind of style them out as much as possible and chose them perfectly for that video part because it kind of shows a more refined trick opposed to a new trick.
And then when you think of your riding, before you were Peter Line, the larger-than-life pro snowboarder, like in your blockbuster video days, what riders stuck out to you? Like which guys did you have on your wall in your room?
Are you talking about blockbuster video days as in when I used to work at Blockbuster
Video?
Video?
Yeah, when you're a little grom.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you're just using the term Blockbuster videos as in Mack Dawg videos. I think it's great. So yeah, my bedroom is very important to me, as my mom kind of found out when she tried to rearrange it one day when I was 13 or 12 or something like that. I just got super mad. Anyway, it was covered from corner to corner with like cutouts from Thrasher and Transworld Skate and all that stuff. And then obviously that started kind of overlapping with snowboard images and stuff. Rankwood, I was always kind of stoked, even though he was the local hero. I still kind of really appreciated his riding and his weird cranky arm that kind of gave him style too. Like it's always kind of like these weird little standout things about a rider that kind of defines their style. Where Rankwood kind of has weird crooked arm, but then he'd also do all these fakey tricks and switch tricks and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, through the years, it's always like, of course, there's always Craig Kelly. Then as new kind of people came into the sport, always gravitated towards kind of more skate and kind of punk feeling influence because of the culture for me. It wasn't just the sport doing the tricks that attracted me, is the whole culture around it, who the people were. They're kind of like outcasts, but they're slightly artists in ways, kind of fashiony style that was different, and like skiing or even elements of skateboarding with kind of music thrown in there. So it's kind of the whole culture of the sport and everything around it, and that includes skateboarding and music.
And that's kind of where we went in our last podcast. Then we started going through your career, and the highlight of it in that podcast was the Forum 8, arguably the most important team in snowboarding. And Forum became a thing because of a dude named Rawls. And I don't know Rawls, but explain who that dude was and where his tentacles kind of touch in action sports.
Rawl Reese, so no S, Rawl. I can do the real full backstory. He was working for this company called Switchbacks, which is like mountain bike gear, and Switchbacks wasn't doing so good. So somehow he kind of took it over, and Switchbacks, he changed it to SB. SB turned into Special Blend. He saw snowboarding. He's kind of in the Southern California scene, knew a bunch of the surf industry folk, and just an outgoing dude, and kind of knew a lot of people, kind of a visionary as well, too. And so he kind of saw snowboarding coming up, jumped into that. It was kind of first people introduction to the actual pros, and Brian Thien, Jameson Bump, Devin, and a bunch of other guys on Special Blend. And that's right when I kind of met him, coming in from Foursquare. He was friends with Greg DeLeo, who was doing Division 23 at the time, and got the introduction, and the rest is history from there. So we already kind of had like a business infrastructure going with Special Blend, and so that's kind of how he got in with Forum, along with kind of giving Greg the idea, and just kind of basically saying, Greg, we should start this thing on our own, and don't need anybody else necessarily.
Now it's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Elon Skis. And I'm in love with both my Ripstick 106 Black Edition and the 96 Black Edition. They are so fun and lively, all while remaining light and stable. And I'm not the only person who thinks these ski better than the competition. Both of these skis were named Editor's Picks in Free Skier magazine tests. So the pros out there, the testers, everyone who's actually getting on these skis, they know they're the best skis. I'm telling you they're amazing too. You're going to feel the difference. Because great product is why Elan is building a cult following in the US, but what's really amazing about the brand is that they built a solar power plant on top of their state-of-the-art factory. And their independence from fossil fuels, along with that new solar plant, will provide a carbon sink as powerful as 15,000 trees on an annual basis. They're putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to the planet. So to find out about all things Elan, head on over to elanskis.com. Next up is Outdoor Research. They've been building award-winning outerwear and gear in Seattle since 1981. For 40 years, badasses in the mountains have trusted OR gear to be the best, and they still are. But when you head over to outdoorresearch.com these days to see their new line of product, you're going to notice some major differences. While OR still makes that badass technical gear you've come to trust, they've branched out and hired new cutting-edge designers who have their fingers on the pulse to create new fits, cuts, styles, and colorways that are still functional, but now styled to look great at the resort, in the park, in the backcountry, at the bar, or even a night on the town. And there really is so much new stuff to check out from OR. It's not just outerwear. I'm stoked because everything looks so good that I'm about to have a full OR wardrobe. And if you want to do that, I'm going to help you make it happen by getting you 25% off all non-sale items. So go shopping at outdoorresearch.com, and when you check out, enter the code POWEL25. That's all caps and numbers with no spaces, and you'll get the deal. Please note that you won't be able to use the code on OR Pro products. My final sponsor this round is GoPro. And if you aren't using a GoPro for your POV footage, well, you're blowing it, and I'm guessing you already know this. Everyone should have one. But if you don't want the full-sized Hero 11, GoPro has a solution for you. You're going to get the same incredible video performance of the Hero 11 Black in a smaller, lighter, and simpler design with the GoPro 11 Hero Black Mini. And this little guy features new mounting options, including the more low-profile mounting setup that folks have been asking for, a revolutionary 8x7 sensor that's built for the best social media sharing, and the Emmy award-winning Hypersmooth 5.0 stabilization, which has turned my once so shaky it made you sick filming style into footage of beauty. And your footage will be beautiful too. To find out more about the Hero 11 Black Mini and all things GoPro, head on over to GoPro.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. With the forum concept, Rawl is looked at as a visionary. Did he really kind of just look at what was going on in skateboarding with the whole team concept and kind of copy what was going on there with forum?
I think it's more than just copy, because he actually was friends with a bunch of the skate guys, Ken Block, with Steve Rocco. He'd have lots of meetings with Steve Rocco. And so he kind of got a lot of that from Steve and doing World Industries. Steve's the guy who founded World Industries and all pro freestyle skateboarder and all that stuff. So yeah, he is more than just like kind of copy. He actually did fully studied and got the answers direct from the source type of a thing. So did the same thing, but in the snowboarding terms that Steve was trying to do or did with World Industries.
I mean, it seems like he took that World Industries model and then he took you, who's kind of like the young Yoda of snowboarding at that time. You've got so much momentum behind you. And he's like, hey, Peter, we're going to create this super team and you are going to be the guy who's putting the people on this team. Was it pretty much like, you're going to be part of this brand forum, you're going to put in zero financial investment, you're going to get a piece of the brand, and we're going to give you a budget to sign the best team in the world?
When you say it that way, it sounds really cool.
It does, right?
Coming in from when I was like just kind of 20, 21-year-old kid, not really knowing that side of it my entire life, was just, going down the hill and hitting jumps and then doing graphics and stuff for snowboards that I wanted in the future. So basically, Rawl just had the formula of like, you get the biggest name riders or create the biggest name riders. And the way you create them is through the best movies. And he basically just saw the formula of like, we can create the guys, we don't need to even pay for the guys. We didn't go after the big name money guys that we just kind of buy, where we could create them with Mike's video, and he trusted Mike and myself to pick who we thought were going to be the next big name riders and to kind of blow them up. And so that would obviously be a DJ, Bjorn, Duffy, JP, Devin already kind of established name, and those guys, so we started doing our own videos, and that's instantly how they blew up, and it totally worked that way.
Did you know the team personally, or were they just dudes that you saw that you kind of were like, these guys are going to be fucking awesome, I want them on our crew?
The only guy I really knew was Devin, and he didn't come on till later. And then the other guys, I think DJ is one of the stories I kind of tell a lot about, just like this kid I always see at contests and stuff like that is always riding really good, but he and I weren't on the same kind of level as far as who we were. He seemed a little more kind of jockey at the time than riders I emulated, but at the same time, I still was drawn to his riding, and there's something about it. And then it's the whole kind of theory of, I felt kind of jealous of some person's riding, that they're doing better than me or whatever. That seemed like a likely person to put on the team for that kind of reason, because it's kind of basically saying my gut was telling me this, and that's how my gut was speaking, is like, this person's kind of nagging at you. There's probably a reason why this person's nagging at you.
When you think of that original team that you put together, was anybody on the fence, or were they more like everyone seeing your vision of what was going to happen and they were like, oh man, we've got something special brewing? Like, could everybody feel it when you were putting it together?
As far as in-house, it was like me, Greg DeLeo, Raw, and Mike McIntyre, who were kind of the main dudes at the beginning, with some other guys like Steve Ruff and Travis Wood and stuff. We were kind of more team manager and marketing and stuff like that, who had voices in it. But as we were picking the teams, of course, we kind of run it by everybody and show their parts from previous videos and stuff like that. We've asked a few guys during the whole process, and some people would say no for some reasons or another. Some people were brought up, but then we're like, they don't really kind of fit the team type of a thing. So people got slipped by, and people that just were on the list but didn't quite make it on.
But I'm talking about the riders that you put on. Like, when you're selling this into Bjorn or any of the dudes, and you're like, hey, this is the vision, we're going to put together a team. I mean, did you understand the vision in the beginning of what you were doing? Like, modeling it after something that happened at World Industries? Like, hey, we're going to get these elite riders, we're going to have Mack Dawg put together video parts that are going to blow people's minds, and we're going to change the world of snowboarding. Did everybody believe in that vision in the beginning, or was it something that kind of happened after the fact?
I think everyone kind of came into the same viewpoint, having the same viewpoint, so there really wasn't anything there to kind of argue against. I mean, as far as me as a young kid coming in, kind of hearing Raw and them going through it, we all kind of, yeah, of course. And this is the type of rider, this is kind of new school style of riders that we're looking for. Like, great, perfect. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. And as far as picking guys from the team, there'd be negotiations and what to do. But basically, when we were kind of picking smaller name riders and saying you're going to be starring in a Mack Dawg movie, the only kind of, I think, bigger issue was Bjorn at the time, who was kind of doing all the contest circuits. And he just kind of had to be convinced of, like, dude, you don't need to do that shit anymore. You're doing good in them, but, you're not going to be the one winning all the contests. But we're going to give you one of the biggest names possible for doing a video part. And then you can do your contest stuff on the side, do everything. So a little bit of convincing on some levels of that, but I think everyone fully understood the best way of making the greatest team in snowboarding was kind of a model that's been proven in the past through skateboarding.
For sure. How long until the brand really takes off? Like, does that happen after the first season that the brand launches?
It quickly got noticed, that's for sure, right away. There's something different about Forum right off the get-go. From just like a brand being spearheaded by one of the new kids on the block, not to quote a half-dogger movie, New Kids on the Block. But anyway, kind of having a new young team out there, and then the first ads kind of showing these kind of progressive tricks, and then the kids also being beforehand in Mack Dawg videos, so people started to even kind of recognize who they were. And then as soon as the team kind of grew, we had these ads with like the bugs and all that stuff, very standout-ish ads. We had some graphics that had other snowboarders on it and other kind of different styles of graphics. Everything kind of just stuck out as being very new, fresh, interesting, intriguing, progressive with the brand all together, even though our products for the first couple of years weren't the greatest. It was definitely just a big marketing kind of company, and a company that pushed the sport as far as kind of tricks and the imagery and the culture, not the products right away, but soon to kind of catch up there.
Yeah, when you're selling to 12 to 20-year-old boys, it really doesn't matter about the product as long as the riders and the tricks and the ads and the videos are on point. People are going to buy into the brand, and you guys prove that. And then by like 2000, the product has stepped up a couple levels. These are the resistance days, and this is when the brand is on fire. How many boards are you guys putting into the market, you think, by that time?
Oh, shit, I don't know board numbers.
Okay, just asking.
Yeah, board numbers are totally different compared to what they are now, just because there's less companies back then. And so, yeah, snowboarding was much bigger as far as kind of board companies go than it is now. Especially the kind of boards that last a little bit longer, and the culture is not as kind of strict as far as like needing a new board every season. The progression of the board's qualities were improving year to year, so people are more apt to get a new board every year. But yeah, as far as numbers, I don't even really know.
Okay. Well, when you look at the brand, you guys did so many things right between the riders, the look and feel of the videos, the ads, everything. But what are the things you did wrong?
In hindsight, you always kind of see that stuff as you're kind of going through it. There was definitely a lot of money going out the door as far as kind of travel, marketing, partying. And then I think on the inside, there's a whole other type of shit going on that I really wasn't too privy of. And I think a lot of it was slightly hidden as well within kind of the money part of things, and then investors kind of coming in at the very end, taking money out, or kind of hear stuff after the whole fact. I don't really have a clear picture of right now, but there was definitely a lot of weird shit going on with the money stuff coming in. And it was a huge company that was just selling out everywhere. It was big marketing pushes, and we couldn't get products. And so we're trying to get money for the manufacturing and material costs and everything. And so within that structure of trying to find financing, I think there's some shit that hit in there that was the ultimate demise.
Yeah, when you think about money, at the peak of your snowboarding career was, I feel like, the peak of the snowboard industry. And the one thing that's interesting for you is, like you've always said, money was never a driver for you. Remaining core in the sport was the most important thing. And I have a ton of respect for that. But at the same time, when you were at the top of your game, were you able to make a couple $100,000 a year being a pro snowboarder?
Of course I was getting paid really well for doing something I love and getting paid. And a lot of the money that I was getting was from royalties from snowboard graphics, or from my snowboards, and then Foursquare having partial ownership in that, and the way they kind of structured everything. And so within that kind of aspect, to where I saw what the money was coming in wasn't viewed as being taken away from other people type of a thing. And with Foursquare, it was, here's your budget. This budget is for you and the rest of the team. And so I kind of cut everybody else what they should be getting paid or whatever in Foursquare. And then my cut, and it was always pretty relative. Yes, I might have been the biggest name of the writer, but I wasn't getting paid twice as much as the rest of the guys or anything necessarily either. So it was all kind of relative there in those respects. Of the money was kind of coming in. It was accounted for, basically.
So you've got a lot of money coming in, but you're not taking advantage of it. You're kind of breaking it off as being the manager of the budget. But this is a time in snowboarding when there's so much money and so many opportunities coming in. A lot of the opportunities aren't core to who Peter Line is, but there's agents and people trying to get you to do different things. What is the biggest deal that you left on the table because you're like, that's not me, I'm not going to sell out like that?
So yeah, the agents kind of knew deals that I would and wouldn't take beforehand. So a lot of them weren't really offered necessarily because, I mean, there might be some big deals that were outside industry type thing that weren't huge money, but they just weren't worth it to kind of take on for 20 grand or whatever like that. I remember I did like a knee brace thing with somebody for some good money. He was Don Joy. But it was like one of those ones where I'm like, well, do I promote a knee brace? I just had a knee surgery or something like that. So at that point, it kind of seemed fine to do. And then it's like, well, it's only going to be in like trade magazines or something like that. So it's all about how my name would be used on certain things. And this is before all of the X Games and energy drink money kind of came in. So I think at the very beginning, there was a few of those ones starting to kind of hit. And I was always kind of a no to anything outside industry. But I wasn't really ever offered like some $500,000 deal by Coca-Cola or some shit like that either, to where I had to actually think about like, whoa, that's a fucking shit ton of money. So I didn't really have any of those ones there, just kind of some bigger name outside industry things that as long as my name doesn't get kind of thrown around and overused and makes my image look bad, I'd take some of those ones, but there wasn't too many.
So it's good that you never sold out, but in terms of talking about money and really blowing money, eventually in the forum days, it's like comes to be 2003, 2004. I don't know what happens, but forum is out of money and Burton comes in and saves the day. And it sounds like you're not aware of everything going on behind the scenes at this time. Do you have any idea of what was going on and how the company that seemed to be doing so well wasn't?
From what I was kind of getting from it all, it was growing really quickly to where they needed an influx of cash to buy products to kind of cover all the material costs, board costs.
Yep.
Like a few $1,000,000 to make boards because we have all these sales, but we don't have it because we spent it all on marketing or whatever. And so we'd have to go get another investor. And the CEO at the time, Marcus, went to his family. And from here, I don't know too many details and anything there. But things just kind of got weird to where they started taking ownership away from the other people in order to cover this money. Like, oh, the way it kind of works, like, well, you take away ownership, but the company grows, and so that smaller percentage is going to be worth more anyway. Shit like that type of stuff. And that only went so far before they didn't have any money. And so that's where it's kind of like, well, there's a lot of weird shit going on. And they had some warehouse and fulfillment costs and some other infrastructure costs that got out of hand, basically. And they're in debt and they couldn't get out of it. And that's where Burton came in and saved the whole thing.
Do you have any idea that Burton's coming in to save the whole thing, or is it a big surprise in a press release that you read?
No, at that point, I knew because I was an owner.
Okay.
So this is what's going on type of a thing. Burton's going to come in and no one's going to make any money because they're buying it for debt. And so it was like, yes, I'm happy that Forum is going to keep on going, but like I put all my time and shit into this to have ownership and have a nice payday. One of those things where like, well, I could have been riding for Burton this entire time and gotten paid twice as much. But I had my interest in Forum and wanted to keep kind of core and grow this brand. So it was a little bit kind of a letdown there. At the same time, I did get paid quite a good amount of money going forward with Burton still owning Forum. And so it's still kind of part of it then, just as a rider at this point.
When you're part of it as a writer, are you also part of it as like a designer? Are you doing graphics and are you going to Vermont and seeing what the culture is at Burton or Forum as Burton?
Yeah, so when Burton came in, they separated the program And it got separated even out in Vermont, where there's like almost different buildings to where people are doing the program were separate from the people doing the Burton stuff, completely separated. So it was really cool the way they did it, and they did work with the team a whole lot. And it was actually really cool getting flown out there, and actually we had some amazing designers and stuff at Forum beforehand, and just kind of seeing the different ways that people work. So I've always been kind of really interested in working with everybody on the art department side of things. So yeah, they're a really big part of that. They brought me in, did some more designs of the Foursquare as well. Same with board graphics, did some graphics for them for my boards going forward. So yeah, working with them was really awesome.
So it doesn't sound like a bad deal other than the fact that you lose your ownership piece, which might make you a little bit bitter, but it doesn't really sound like that. It just kind of sounds like you lost like a nest egg. But when you're with Burton and you're there for, almost like 8 years or something like that, I think 2013 rolls around, and that's when your time ends with the brand. And when I say the brand, with Forum, what happens there?
So when Burton decided to fold things up, I had a little bit of inclination that they're going to do that with Foursquare, which I was starting to get more involved with, going to European sales meeting and stuff. And with Foursquare kind of changing things up again and kind of brought me in to work on new designs with them and going out to the sales meeting, making announcements that I was coming back in. But then I kind of halfway through that whole deal, I stopped getting communications, and my go-to person there was like, oh, let's hold up a little bit. And so at that point, after a few weeks of that, I was like, okay, something's going on here. And then got the press release a little bit later, and I didn't even realize that Forum was also included with all of that. So they just kind of lumped it all together, closing the whole program down. So the Forum thing I heard at the same time as anybody else did when they saw the press release, or basically I just got a phone call from a friend of mine. He was like, what do you think? And I'm like, what about what? He's like, dude. And they told me, he's like, what the fuck? And so that's how I first heard about it.
It's time for my second sponsor break, and Peter Glenn Ski and Sports has been getting people out into the mountains since 1960. And before the internet took off, Peter Glenn prided themselves on being the best in retail, offering the most knowledge and the best service. They still have that, but not everyone can get to one of their retail locations. But there's always the internet, and the Peter Glenn shopping experience is what you want from a website. Smooth, easy to navigate, and full of information. And peterglenn.com has all the brands, all the products, and they always have a deal going on. If that's not enough, they offer free shipping on orders of $49 or more, a no-hassle return policy, and they price match any reputable shop on the web. So please support the brand that supports me, and check out Peter Glenn Ski and Sports before you buy from someone else. My next sponsor is Stanley, another iconic Seattle brand that has been ahead of the curve since 1913. While we all know Stanley for creating that iconic green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot all day long, they still do that and a whole lot more these days. And they have always been the right choice when it comes to the planet. If you are still using single-use plastics for your beverages, it's time to make a change for the environment and get yourself a Stanley water bottle for starters. I'm making it easier than ever to do so. You'll save 30% on all Stanley products when you head on over to stanley1913.com, buy some stuff, and I highly recommend a water bottle and a set of their pint glasses, which I use every single day. And when you check out, enter the code DRINKFAST. That's all one word, all lowercase, no spaces. So that's all one word. That's what that means. And you're done. Spend over $75 and you'll get a limited edition Powell Movement beanie. Last but not least is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing my favorite Northwest beer since 2006. And since they started brewing beer, they've been supporting the sports we love. If you aren't sure about what they've done in action sports, I'll tell you. They're the first beer brand to produce their own ski and snowboard movie. They support a team of A-list athletes, and they have signature beers that donate to causes like Protect Our Winners. And they're part of some of the most important events and properties in action sports. So they've done a lot, and the next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of 10 Barrel and support the beer that supports action sports. To find out more about the beers, the pubs, and events, head on over to 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. Do you get on the phone with all the old guard from Forum and people just talking shit and freaking out like the brand's gone? Or someone asked you, how do you feel? But how did you feel? Was it like a bitterness? Were you hurt? Were you sad? Or was it like time for a fresh start?
At the time of hearing about it, a lot of the original people weren't even involved anymore. So those calls probably came a little bit later. It was more like from team managers and people still involved, reaching out to let everyone know who's on the team. Like, oh yeah, this is what happened. We couldn't say because of this reason. Here's how it's going to go from here, blah, 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 blah. So it's just kind of like getting fired basically. And then here's your severance type of a fucking thing. And so it's more like that. And then anything with me losing something, it takes a little while for it to kind of sink in the real kind of meaning. Well, not necessarily the meaning, because I know it's there, but it's more like going through the logistics first and then full understanding of what is happening or what happened. Then you kind of start relaxing and delving back into the past and what it all kind of meant, how big it was of a part of your life it was. And then that's when it starts getting kind of sad. It's like, holy shit, this is 20 years of my life or whatever it was that I was involved in. This is kind of who I used to be and blah, blah, blah. Everything's kind of changing now. So it was definitely a big thing. And, you know, I, for the bigger meaning of it all, not because it was gone necessarily, but just cried because like, okay, here's a big milestone in my life, in my career, and, you know, a lot of things towards like, wow, this is just kind of a heavy moment in life. Not that I was like crying because I was sad because they're taking form away or anything like that. Nothing like superficial, I guess. But just kind of like the bigger influence of the whole thing and what it meant to me for everything. And then just kind of having that be gone and moving on. It's kind of like a death type of a thing to where you celebrate the person's life and you kind of mourn everything and not just their loss that is gone from you, but also what they've influenced of you and helped with yourself and everything around them and the whole big meaning of the whole thing. You just kind of take it all in.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they took your baby and they killed your baby, which pretty much sucks.
I wouldn't ever compare it to that. That's a whole different ball game. But yes, I know what you kind of mean there.
No one likes dead babies.
Even against Burton. I mean, even at that time against Burton, I wasn't even mad about Burton. I mean, I kind of understood things to a certain effect, like fucking business is business type of a thing. And they wouldn't have been able to shut it down now because they could have not even gotten it in the past type of a thing. So I thank them for the time that they try to make it a thing. You know, I don't know the complete reasons of why they shut it down. I've heard rumors and hearsays and whatever type of stuff of why, or that it was planned to be shut down or whatever the reasons were. But that really wasn't anything of it. It's just more like Forum is gone. That was a huge part of my life. So yeah, it wasn't just like sad. It was just the whole emotions all ramped into one. Kind of a big one.
Right as that's happening, or, you know, a little bit after that, that's when I start seeing the hashtag pop up online, GiveForumToPeter. Who started that?
I believe that was started by a friend, Sean Tedore.
Oh, okay. I didn't know Tedore started that, which is interesting because that'll tie into this whole podcast at the end. So Tedore's the one who starts starting that hashtag, and that's not going to happen at that point. It's 2014. I don't think Burton's planning on giving away anything at that point. But fast forward a few years, or fast forward a bunch of years to a few months ago, and there were some cryptic social media posts from Jeremy Jones and speculation that Forum was coming back. And first, was that a planned leak, or was he just really excited about what was going on?
So, with the GiveForumToPeter going even further back, Josh Schoonover, the attorney who was able to get the Forum trademarks after Burton left them on the table to legally be able to claim them again from somebody. A lot of his big influence was that GiveForumToPeter type of a thing, and knew what Forum was, knew its importance in the sport, and wanted to do something grand, I guess, in that respect, and make that a reality. So it took him a number of years to go through the process before he started approaching me, Jeremy, and Mack Dawg on all that. We went through our negotiations there, and I think nothing was really there until we signed the contract. And the whole kind of leaking rumors and all that stuff was all kind of our launching of the marketing campaign for the new Forum. We want to control that rumor narrative and start the loading next type of a thing to basically kind of confirm it before we really had anything to show.
So it's kind of like you leak it, see if there's any interest from the public, and when it is leaked, like all the media outlets are picking it up, everybody starts talking about it, and you're like, Forum still is relevant. Yeah,
I don't think it was about seeing if it was still there. We were going to do it anyway, whether people kind of wanted it or not, which was kind of my whole thing during the whole negotiations is if it's going to come back, it has to be done in a certain way. Otherwise, I don't want to even touch it. I'd rather not ever come back just going to come back to have it done completely wrong and whatever, like have it just be a joke and then it just fades away again and never comes back ever. So the whole tease thing is like, well, we're just excited. Jeremy, especially. Jeremy's a good one at that, where he leaks shit on his own, even if we don't even plan it. So
okay.
He starts wearing logos and stuff. It's like, dude, we're not showing that off yet. Like, come on, dude. Like, what the fuck? Like, we have this whole thing planned out, and then Jeremy's like, oh, wearing it, or Dog or somebody's, oh, you're wearing the fucking new F already? We're supposed to have a whole big thing about that. So, like, yeah, I mean, nothing really ever goes as planned, but the one plan was we want to start slowly showing up and have the core kids who are watching or have a little bit of knowledge or deep in the industry are the ones kind of first know to start seeing the rumors as well, just from the Loading Next Instagram stuff.
And I feel like you guys have a cheat code for this whole thing to happen too, because you're good friends with Blue Montgomery. Blue owns Capita and the mothership, his factory out in Austria. It's one of the best factories in the entire world. And does that personal relationship with Blue, does that help you guys make small production runs and you really don't have to like bet the farm on the brand? You can do it in a small, calculated manner, the rollout?
With Blue, yeah, I mean, it helped to be friends with him. And then my business partner, who's part of the forum thing too, is Blue's old roommate and one of his best friends. And so that was also a huge help. Capita, they stopped doing OEM with other brands, and so they're only doing Capita at the mothership now. And so when we approached him, that was their big argument. He's like, yeah, we don't do this anymore. We don't want to do your guys' boards. And he gave us all his reasons of why we shouldn't do it, not just because they didn't do OEM anymore, but just because business and how it might be kind of difficult to work with mothership and the expense of it and everything. And we're like, well, we don't want to fuck up and do shitty boards again like we did the first time. This time around, we want to do the best board, and you guys make the best boards. So basically, we're just going to still sit here and fucking jab at you until you say yes. Yeah, we weren't doing any big paid marketing at all, no paid marketing. And so we know this thing needed to kind of grow slow, which is also another advice from Blue. It's like, don't rush things, just kind of go slow. And so, yeah, the first run of boards is all limited edition type stuff. Probably going to the next seasons will probably be kind of lower runs anyway until we start getting a foothold and moving forward. So going at a slow pace to make sure it's going to work out, hopefully.
Are you able to tap into Blue's distribution as well, or is that something that you're on your own with in terms of getting the boards out there?
That's completely different. That's not us. Like, that was kind of one of the things, like, okay, you're not doing this, whatever. So like, we kind of knew that from the very beginning that we're not going to jump in on that stuff at all. We're doing our own distribution and also doing direct sales, which Capita doesn't really do, or they didn't. I'm not even sure. So we're kind of just doing a different business method there. So yeah, it's completely separated from Capita, except for the boards being made at mothership.
Okay. And it's pretty cool to recreate a brand that you made legendary and do it in a different way, because it seems like you're not going to do it with the Rockstar team first like you did before, because that's a very expensive way to roll out a brand. But when you look at the marketplace, like I look at the other Jeremy Jones, Big Mountain Jeremy Jones. He started his brand in like 2010, and the snowboard world needed it. There was not many brands pushing splitboard technology out there, and he was using that, and he was like, man, I've got to quit my long-term sponsor, start my own brand so I can have the product that I need for myself. Now, Forum's a totally different animal, and there are plenty of boards like what Forum's making out on the market. So what's the hook going to be with Forum?
I don't know. That's for us to figure out, I guess. I mean, to come into it, Forum has always represented new and progression and doing it for the kids in the industry. It's not about delivering necessarily a new product to the industry, I should say. The way the other Jeremy Jones did it with needing to have a certain board for his backcountry adventures and stuff. Where Forum is coming in, I think we all just kind of saw there's a space in snowboarding right now where there's a lot of companies out there doing their own thing and having their riders and selling their product, where there's a space where Forum can come in and work with the progression and continue to help fun and advance snowboarding in cool ways that it used to be, and bringing in the new generation of riders to help push them where they want the sport to go, opposed to having other brands push the sport where they feel it should be. And we want the kids, and the kids who are pushing snowboarding to evolve the sport from here on out, kind of the way that we did when we came on in the late 90s.
Well, it sounds really exciting, and it's taking it back to a different time, and you were the dude who was the point person back then. So it's exciting that you're at the helm now to be able to recreate a brand that you once created. But what else is exciting is it's time for Inappropriate Questions. And this is a segment where I get someone that you know to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. And this week, I was going to have your business partner, and I think Blue's old roommate, Kenny Burge, ask 3 inappropriate questions. But Kenny's got a sick baby. And Kenny, I think, is sick himself, and it really just didn't work out. So I went to another guy who's come up on this podcast. He was a former forum writer, a K2 and Capita and ride engineer and marketer. He's the one who created GiveForumToPeter. Now he's an engineer over at NHS, working with brands like Independent and Creature. And I'm so stoked for him that he got that gig. But I'm talking about the one and only Sean Tedore. And are you ready for question number 1 from Sean?
Never, but go ahead.
All right, perfect. Here it goes.
Hey, Pete, what's up? I've known you for a long time, and I got a lot of questions for you, but here's a couple just to get you going. When snowboarding and forum was at its peak during the X Games and MTV days, I remember you and the crew were always hanging out in LA and Hollywood, usually with high-profile people. Can you tell me about one of the craziest celebrity encounters? Who was the celeb and what happened?
So we've heard a ton about you and MCA, I think, in the last podcast, and I'm sure you've talked about it a bunch. So let's leave him out of it if that was going to be the one you're going to bring up, and think about a different celebrity that you've hung out and had crazy times with.
Sean loves the celebrity stories, that's for sure. He likes being in the mix. He's got a lot of foam. So about my past, I believe, with all that, to where I'm always fairly chill, and he kind of like gets discouraged, like, dude, you totally could have like gone whatever, to some celebrity or something like that. I mean, we definitely hung out in LA. Nothing too crazy. I can give you a quick little rundown of some shit. Like, I remember one time going to Edward Furlong's house from Terminator.
Oh yeah,
this is past his prime when he's just kind of the drunk kid at the clubs or whatever. And went there with Danny Minnick, who's now kind of a big time painter, friend of mine, artist. And it was just kind of like, everyone's going to his house, cool, hanging around, whatever, don't really know anybody except for a couple people. And just kind of looking through his CDs and game collection, like, oh shit, he's got X Games snowboarding game with me on it. It's like, oh, all right, cool. Robin Williams knew who I was. I saw him at Fred Siegel one time. I kind of walk out, and Robin Williams points at me. He's like, oh, there he is. And I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, yeah, thank you for making cool snowboard apparel and stuff. I ride Foursquare, and started talking with Robin Williams for probably a good 10 minutes. And Tara Takias was there also. It's pretty awesome. Lots of times seeing like Heath Ledger, so seeing some of the greats when they were younger before they passed.
And do any of these people, like you said, Robin Williams knew who you were, but are there any other celebrities that are like, holy shit, it's Peter Line?
I don't recall.
Okay, we'll just say there was a ton of them, but you were drinking and you don't remember.
Of course. I mean, there's always ones where like Beats by Dre, Dr. Dre, his wife, and their kids snowboard and stuff like that. So I heard that their kids knew who I was and his wife knew who I was. And these are pretty sad celebrity stories, to tell you the truth. I don't know. Like, I never hooked up with any famous people or anything like that. No famous models or anything.
Well, that's another question that we're going to get to.
Puffy's entourage pushed me off the dance floor. I think they also pushed Tony Hawk off the dance floor when Puffy walked in one time. Pretty funny, because I think Tony Hawk was probably richer than he was at the time. It was just kind of just funny shit. Mos Def is super, super nice. Chat with him for a brief time. Yeah, I don't know. There's just like all just kind of weird small ones like that where you kind of meet somebody. Because it's easy for like a friend to go up to a celebrity they kind of met a few times and then introduce a famous snowboarder. So I got introduced to a number of people, and they're all usually pretty cool, pretty chill.
Nice. All right, we're going to jump into Sean's second inappropriate question.
Your graphics and art have always been on the edge of what people are comfortable with. Was there ever a graphic or ad idea you had that was rejected due to making others uncomfortable?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely one. Now, in hindsight, I totally understand why I was rejected. Is one for Electric. So with Electric, they'd have their big campaign idea and then let me do my little twist on one of them. And so, for an example, they had one where they used animals to have a correlation or whatever with their goggle or glasses at the time. One would be a white rabbit, and then Jamie Anderson or somebody would be having like these white goggles with a fuzzy white beanie on or something like that. It kind of looks like a white rabbit or something like that with pink lenses, the rabbit's eyes. And so I did one where duckbill platypus, where I had like a brown hoodie on, and then I was eating like a sandwich on dark rye bread that looked like the platypus bill. Another one, I forget the whole thing of what this ad series is all about, but anyway, I had a photo of me juggling babies. They're these realistic babies we got at Toys R Us, and they're all covered in blood. And so I was kind of juggling them, and obviously there's a couple on the ground that I dropped. And basically that went to Bruce Beach, who's actually really awesome and like lets anything fly usually in that one. And he's just like, okay, this one might have gone too far.
Dead babies, man. People don't like them.
Yeah, that one might have been a bit much.
We'll jump into Sean's final inappropriate question.
All right, one last one. Ever since I met you, Pete, you've always had a way with the ladies. You remind me of the Pete Davidson of your time, landing the hottest model types. How did you do it, and who would you say is your ultimate celebrity crush?
Sean does love the celebrities. And I've got to say that you have an 11-year-old French bulldog, which means that before everyone had French bulldogs, you had a French bulldog. You were an early adopter of the chick magnet that is the French bulldog. Did that ever help you pull ladies as well?
It may have. May have come up in conversations, especially with some lady who might have already had a French bulldog, so it makes the conversations go a little bit smoother.
For sure.
You know, I can't say I was walking Parnell on the street and then some girl came up to me and said, I want to take you home with me. I don't know. That's news to me that I'm a smooth operator. I know I've had some pretty cute girlfriends in the past. I don't think snowboarding hurt that to be successful at something. I think that's always kind of a turn on for anybody, no matter what it is, snowboarding or art or business. If you're successful at something, it's kind of a turn on that you've achieved something in life. So that could be a little bit part of it. I'm a little bit odd and different from other people, which might be a relief from the stagnant everyday person that some girl might have met. I can't say it's my height unless it's a much shorter girl than me who doesn't like tall guys.
Have you dated a huge model?
No.
Okay. He said model type, so I was wondering if you had the 6'2" model.
I've dated some tall, hot girls that could be models.
Okay.
Or they might have been models. I don't even know.
Well, we are going to leave it at that, and we'll say that's Inappropriate Questions, and that's the podcast. And really, it's an honor having you on. When I was living in Colorado, I was working at Buzz's Boards, and that's back when I snowboarded. I didn't ski. I put 110 days on my snowboard every year, and I couldn't get enough of the Forum 8. You were a hero, and not only just to the shop guys, but to every snowboarder on the planet because of what you created. And even though Burton bought Forum and did what they did, your contribution's never going to be forgotten. And now it's like you're in the position to do it all over again, and that's pretty exciting. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing what you continue to build.
Well, awesome. That was quite an exit there you gave me. I feel proud.
So that was time with Peter Line, and it should be interesting, this Forum reboot. I mean, the people that grew up with the brand in the 90s, well, we're in our 40s right now. And those who got into the brand during the Burton years, well, they're in their 30s. So I feel like the brand will be kind of new to a lot of snowboarders out there, but I don't question it. J Skis has proven the direct-to-consumer brand model works, and if the blueprint is followed correctly, I'm sure Peter Line and crew will absolutely crush it with the Forum brand. That's the podcast. I want to thank you for listening and ask you to submit a review wherever you listen or on social media. If I read it on the air, you'll get a very limited edition multicam Powell Movement hat. Finally, please support the folks who support this show. They are Elon Skis, Stanley, Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Outdoor Research, GoPro, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.